Hello and blessings to the Central family this evening. I'm Tim Corbet, an elder, past deacon, and oftentimes an usher at Central. When we were asked to participate in the devotional program, I noted some of the guidelines. Be brief, personal, and reflect God's faithful love to you. This evening, I hope to accomplish all these objectives. Before I start, I'd like a shout out to my Central flock. As leader, I decided we needed an identity, so I named ours the Central Dorper Flock. I chose this kind of strange name as these sheep are known to be a hardy, adaptable breed. What better name to have during this COVID season? I'd also like to acknowledge that through this process, I have a much better understanding of the monumental task it takes for our staff to publish and create and distribute these devotionals. And kudos to them for putting these in our daily inbox. I do believe it's part of the glue that really has kept us together during these hard times. I realize we're having a Zoom fatigue period here. The fact we're surviving with increased video content and these Zoom meetings helped me decide to deliver a message for the post-COVID period. One of the most used definitions of Zoom: to focus on an object using a lens so that the object's apparent distance from the observer changes. Why don't we take this time to zoom or focus on the Bible or Jesus changing the distance between us? Let's take this time as a half full glass in our worldview. Last fall, Becky and I were visiting our grandkids in Las Vegas. Will's in third grade and Sadie just started kindergarten. We were able to observe their virtual school. We actually had them come over to our condo for a few days. I know grandparents remain in awe of the ability of these kids to multitask and keep attentive. Sadie was barking orders at one of her classmates whom she'd never met and was explaining how to fix the volume on the screen. While I was in half-grade kindergarten, I had to ask where the bathroom was located and barely knew how to identify my nap rug cubbyhole. These kids today are amazing. I'm also struck with the breadth of concern for our kids during these times, especially the younger ones. While reviewing several articles, I plucked this quote: "The shutdown of our schools poses major challenges to our students and their teachers. Our public education system was not built nor prepared to cope with a situation like this. While we do not know the exact impact, we know that children's academic performance is deteriorating during the pandemic, along with their progress on other developmental skills." That's pretty depressing. The comments I'm about to make should not be construed as someone with any expertise with these educational warnings. I only want to take that Zoom lens back a bit in history to help provide some context. I'd like to compare my Sadie's COVID time to a couple of other childhood generations growing up during difficult times, national difficult times. My first verse is from Isaiah 40. A voice cries in the wilderness. A voice cries, "In the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be lifted up, and every mountain and hill be made low. The uneven ground shall become level, and the rough places a plain. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken." While a kindergartner at Kaiser Elementary, one of my brothers was in first grade. 3 years earlier, he had been diagnosed with polio. Along with a cousin, we had two close family members who contracted that virus. We were the baby boom generation born after World War II. We tend to think about what a wonderful time it was to grow up in America. I recall as a 3-year-old being allowed one time to visit my polio-afflicted brother at St. Mary's Hospital. I was standing in the parking lot waving as they stuck him out of the top floor window. No contact. He was in a polio ward, not too dissimilar to the no contact of the COVID wards today. While digging back on this topic, I discovered a book written by Carol Ann Hartnell in 2018. It was an autobiographical book entitled Scary Spring, the 1950s Adventures of Pete and Carol Ann. She dedicated the book to polio victims and their families. including 3 family members who had suffered the dreaded disease. And she thanked them for their extraordinary courage. The book has been popularized again as it adds sensitivity to what the children were dealing with at that time. Dr. Jonas Salk's polio vaccine began its first trials in April 1954, when 700,000 first, second, and third graders lined up to receive the vaccine. America began to hope that Dr. Salk's vaccine would stop polio. I'd like to share a passage from this book that may resonate with parents and grandparents. Did you hear the latest, Carol Ann? Our elementary school got picked for the polio vaccine trial. Everyone in the school is getting polio shot next week. We're all going to be polio volunteers. That's what they call kids who get polio's first vaccines. But don't worry, that shot is just a little sting. Yikes, I said. When we get the shot, will we have to stand in a long line at school with our sleeves rolled up so the school nurse can inject us? I asked as I picked up my school bag. Yep, said Pete. But what are you worried about? You're a winner, Carol Ann. You just won at dodgeball. You can win again in a shot. That's not true. I'll faint. I'll throw up. I'll flee like a puppy. My stomach churned. I hate shots. And I really hate getting a shot from the school nurse. Pete looked at me and said, gee, the school nurse gives good shots when you hold real still. It's just a little pinch that stings a tiny bit. Then I thought to myself, polio's worse. It's the worst. Polio cripples and kills. Look how it crippled Tim. A shot's not going to be as bad as getting polio. Oh, God, give me courage, I prayed. What day is the vaccine arriving? I asked in a resigned voice. Within a few months, we'll be sharing stories like this as we inoculate our kids with the COVID vaccine. Many of you probably did not realize how long the polio scare dominated our childhoods. In the case of my brother, he received a trial treatment and in less than 60 days was cured. I asked him if he could remember the days and the long-term impact of suffering through the trauma. He only had a few distant memories. He could not find any negative effects. I also have older brothers who were in the Great Depression and World War II, and I asked them to talk about the difficult times it was to make sacrifices. They were known as the silent generation. Both of them had a more nostalgic view and almost a fond memories of all those tough times. Kids born during World War II were given the handle of the skip generation, and my brother Randy was part of the polio generation. Each of these subgroups became a tougher group of kids growing up. I hope these can serve as encouraging words as we deal with our COVID kids and grandkids today. This generation will be working into their 70s. They too will have more challenges in the future. It's the valleys that help prepare us for the mountains. God is in control, not the internet. From Romans 8, for I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. You know, Jesus was a master of using parables applicable for any generation and time of life. And I've often found using a metaphor to make a point registers with the brain in a different way. I know our pastors invariably use this technique to perfection in their sermons. So I'd like to end my talk tonight with a metaphor. I've been blessed for most of my life with being able to play sports. I played basketball with a group of guys until about age 65 when my knees gave out. As the physical side of my game failed, I had to improve my thinking game. And speaking of kings, after one night of play, one of the guys came over and anointed me the king of the no-look pass. As we age, we develop a sense for not only the seen, but the not seen. I would realize if I could see the position of several players, it meant that there was a negative space on the floor, and I could have faith my man was open for a surprise or a no-look pass. So how do I bend this parable into a spiritual lesson? As we look into our faith, we have a better understanding of the unseen in our lives. While we struggle to find our place in life or on a team, Jesus is sizing up our opponents or obstacles, and he makes that no-look pass around our transgressions. It's unexpected, but being on his team, not surprising. As Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen, eternal. Thank you for your time this evening.